Hello, everyone. Guess what today is? Last class day before spring break. Yeah, at least for this class. So hi, everybody. I think I worked out my technology issue from Monday, so yeah, thanks for your patience with that. I think that issue actually is my little display adapter is a little glitchy because it happened again in my next class, so I know it's not the Wi-Fi. So anyway, yeah. So today things should hopefully go a little more smoothly, and it's a good thing we got the sound working because we're doing sound today, so that's convenient. Today I am going to talk a little bit about, well, I'm going to talk most of the class period about sound, and then the last thing I'm going to talk about is how to export your video so that you can prepare it for uploading it to various file sharing sites, etc. So the assignment sort of prompt itself suggests, I think, that you use, let's see, so yeah, it says that you should use YouTube and share the link or upload the video to Canvas. There are several other video sharing sites out there, like Vimeo or other things. So if there's another sharing site that you prefer, I don't think we really care about like which sharing site you use, as long as we can see it. That's all that really matters. And the reason that we're asking you to put it on a sharing site, you could potentially upload it to Canvas as well. But the reason we offer that as like your first choice is because uploading it to Canvas can be kind of difficult because some of these files are rather large. And just in our experience, like that can kind of hold students up. So we don't want that to happen to you. So it tends to work a lot more smoothly if you use a sharing site like YouTube or Vimeo. So does anybody have any kind of questions about stuff? Any stuff? All right. So as you might have already heard, I hope you've heard, we're having a midterm tomorrow. So that midterm window is going to open again. It will open midnight tonight, and then you have 24 hours to take the Canvas quiz. So if you have any issues with the midterm, like not being able to access it or stuff like that, you can email me. If you email me about a question, I will try my best to clarify the question, but I obviously will not give you the answer until after the exam period is over. So just wanted to say that. Happens every semester. So, but yeah, I'm definitely happy to clarify questions if they're confusing or you don't understand what's in the question. All right. Well, I think we're ready to get started. So one of the things that I'm going to do, I'm going to just remind you that I uploaded all these sound clips for you to use. So they're here. These sound clips are professionally produced. I got them when I was working for an advertising agency like a long time ago. One of the things about sound as opposed to other media is that sound technology and sound file standards have not changed much in the last 25 years. Video obviously is getting bigger and bigger, more pixels, but sound is pretty much the same. And if anything, sound is actually getting a little bit lower quality because for this period where we're using Bluetooth headphones and networks to kind of download our sound files, if anything, sound quality has actually degraded. So I just want you to know that if you see a sound file and it's from like 15 years ago, it doesn't matter. It's probably fine. In fact, it might even actually be better than the kinds of sound files we get today. So one of the things that makes sound, sort of, as I mentioned, kind of a little bit degraded is that it's compressed. So most of these files are M4A file format, which is probably right now the most common, one of the most common sound file formats. The other one would be MP3. It's important to know that when you use these sound files that there's some compression there. And is it enough compression for us to sort of like say like, oh my God, that's so chuggy, like I'm not going to use that. No, don't worry about that. But like, I think that, when you're shopping for sound on this sound website, that's one of the things that we're going to talk about, like what makes a good sound file and what makes maybe a not so good sound file. So one of the reasons I provided you with these sound files is that these are all good sound files. They're all high quality. They're compressed, but they're only compressed a little bit. So pretty much any of these would be, you're going to get sort of like a high quality sound experience. When we go to this Freesound website, you're going to see user-generated content. And just like any, social media site, your quality standards may vary, right? So what you're going to see is a bunch of different sort of file formats, a bunch of different standards. And so I'm going to give you just a little bit of guidelines for how to kind of interpret those standards. So the first thing is, if you're really concerned with a high quality kind of format, you want to look for an AIFF or a WAV. So these are sort of two sides of the same coin. AIFF is the uncompressed audio format for Apple, and WAV is the uncompressed audio format for PCs. So they're equivalent. They're not, one is not better than the other. It's just kind of more like a Mac and PC thing. If you are caring like a little bit less about quality, which, for this assignment, I sort of feel like it doesn't have to be like surround sound, theater quality sound, right? Because we're just not doing that. But it's important to know that M4A and respectively MP3 is a compressed format. And so what you're going to find with the compressed formats is that some of them can be quite high quality if they're only compressed a tiny bit. You can also find MP3 files where I would literally sound like Tony the Tiger because it's so compressed, it's almost like, it doesn't even sound like what it's supposed to sound like. So I would just keep that in mind when you're shopping, that this is sort of like an order of goodness. So I wanted to go ahead and just look at a couple of these sounds and kind of show you what some of the parameters are that you might see. So first of all, I think this is a FLAC file, which is actually another file format that probably winds up somewhere over here. So it's not as common, but it's a perfectly fine file format. And there's a couple of things that you want to kind of look for. The sample rate and the bit depth are two sort of parameters that are actually pretty important. So the sample rate, just if you can imagine like the sound moving on a number line, the sample rate is the number of samples that were taken for each sort of digital entry, right? So the higher the sample rate, the better quality your audio will be, because it'll have more fidelity to whatever original, and in some cases there is no original because it might be digitally generated. And so sample rate is something that you want to keep fairly high. I think that a sample rate of 32,000 hertz or above is probably considered a good quality audio file. When we get into bit depth, I would definitely recommend that you use a 16-bit or higher bit depth. So if you use an 8-bit bit depth, you definitely will hear it. It will sound sort of like, maybe a good word to describe it is crunchy. And then lastly, you really want to know whether your file is a stereo file or a mono file. And so I think we all sort of intuitively have experienced stereo sound. It's that sound that you get when you're listening to your headphones and maybe you realize that the music is kind of going back and forth and you're like, whoa, what is happening there? That's, stereo sound, and you can only get that with the sort of two channels, right? Left and right. Some sound files are encoded to be mono files. And there's nothing wrong with a mono file. It just means that it's only going to play in one ear. Now, you can take a mono file and convert it to a stereo file that sort of plays 50% in each ear, but you're not going to get that sort of effect of having things moving through different, ears of your headphones. So we're going to talk a little bit about mono and stereo as well, as we sort of get this into Premiere. So if you're not really sort of interested in having that kind of back and forth element, you could just look for stereo files and they'll be just kind of done. But if you do want to use mono files, you could, if you're doing something that maybe is inspired by horror, you could have somebody over here doing this, and then somebody over here doing this. So a lot of students have done really interesting things with that. I actually use mono files in my own work when I'm using single speaker drivers. So I had a piece recently, not too many years ago, where I made an 8-channel. That means there were 8 speakers, and each speaker was a different voice. And so for that, I needed mono files. So there are reasons why you might want to use a mono file. Anyway, I want to go ahead and play this file, and in order to do that, I'm going to have to take our ambient stuff off here and turn the volume up quite a bit. So, yeah. So, I wanted something with human vocals. So I searched for this because all of the sounds in here are sort of like sound effects. There are very few there are a couple of vocal things, but very few vocal things. So I just wanted something with really clear vocals because when we start putting sound effects on things, I want it to be really obvious that things are not what they used to be. So I'm going to go ahead and download this one, and then I think I'll go ahead and download a mono file just so I can demonstrate that as well. So it's pretty good about giving you all these parameters in the search, so you can search for one channel, which would be a mono file. I almost always open up the actual page that's associated with the file because that's the only way that you can kind of get the full information. Sure. That seems great. So now I need to do 2 things to move these into my project. If I go to my project folder here, I do have a folder called Sound that is full of all of the sound files that I downloaded from Google Drive. I downloaded them ahead of time because I did not have faith in the Wi-Fi. But I'm pretty sure we all know how to do that. So all those sound files are in here. And so what I would probably want to do is drag these files into my sound file. So that's done, and then after that, I'm going to come into Premiere and kind of expand my world here. Go ahead and full screen. I could import them by either dragging them into this window, or I'm kind of a little bit old-fashioned when it comes to stuff like that. I like to actually go to the menu. And so they'll be in here somewhere, probably near the end. It looks like this FLAC file is grayed out, so that means that this version of Premiere is not digging it. That's fine. We can skip it. Now, just a couple more things. If you're using headphones in Premiere, when we're starting audio, I feel like I need to kind of tell you this. If you haven't figured this out already, when you're using headphones in Premiere or any kind of external audio system, like if you go back to your room and you plug it in, with a cable to maybe a stereo system or speakers, in any of those cases, you would need to come into the settings for Premiere and actually tell Premiere where to play the audio, okay? So you come up here to settings and go to audio hardware, and it should just be right here. So right now I'm playing through the room speakers, but generally, and this happens every single time I go to do one of my own projects, I have to switch it back to like whatever I usually do. I think, the reason that they do that is because people who do a lot of audio visual work tend to have multiple sound devices attached to their computer, and so they sort of require you to like do it manually rather than automatically detecting like headphones, for example. So I wanted you all to know about that so you don't get stuck on that. Okay, so up here, at this point, because I feel like I'm pretty much done with all this keyframing and meme texting and all that stuff, I can kind of scrunch these tracks down, and then I can make a little bit more real estate from my audio. I'm going to leave the tracks visible because I want to have some frame of reference for maybe where my audio files should start and stop, right? So also, I think I'm going to just close this panel because I don't need it anymore, and I do like screen space. So so pretty much I went ahead and imported this single file of the female voice. I'm going to go ahead and import a few other files. Probably it might be a good idea, actually, to import the entire folder. And when you import the entire folder, it should actually come in as a folder. So that way, I don't have to kind of hunt through my video clips to actually see. I can just open this up and say, okay, the sound is like in here, and it's only in here, except for that one sound file that I left out. So there's just, like a whole bunch of stuff here. We have this kind of like industrial process happening. So I was kind of thinking like maybe making the audio. There are two sort of ways you can go with sound tracking. One is that you could have audio that really reinforces the content of what's happening in the visuals, or you can have audio that really contrasts and kind of stands against the video, right? And I think I'm going to go for the second approach, which is a kind of contrasting audio. So I think probably I'm going to look for some natural sounds. Here's a 36-second clip of a bullfrog. So I'm just going to slide it over here. It's a little strange. I don't know if it's like a post-pandemic thing, but I've been really into like slightly surreal things lately. So also, I mean, this is more of like a sound that I would probably just use a couple times, like as a kind of punctuation point. I would like to find something that's a little bit longer, so I'm going to sort the clips by length, and see. Ooh, lapping waves. Nice. So yeah, this is definitely like a little bit longer. Perfect. That is oddly relaxing. So I actually kind of like that because the sort of industrial sprinkle production is sort of like a little bit hypnotic. So that, I don't know, I like that. So let's sort of think about, how to maybe make these clips a little bit more gradual. So definitely both of these clips, because they're professionally produced, these are from the Google Drive. These clips, you can see they have a pretty decent period of silence before they turn themselves, start their audio, right? You may see, if you're using the free sound file sharing site, you may find that a sound file has what's called a pop at the beginning. And that's usually something that happens because of the microphone. The microphone gets input, and it's like, oh my God, I'm on, you know? So it's just a tiny little sound that happens at the beginning of a lot of sound files. And the best way to get rid of it is just to use your pen tool and create a ramp. So by doing that, this is going to have really no effect because we're into the sort of silence. This is silence. So we get that flat line on the waveform. But if we went ahead and maybe ramped up the bullfrogs or ramped this up in a slower way, you would see that now it'll start here. And so really, if this looks familiar to you, that's because it is exactly the same thing we did to the video. And so it's really subtle, but it can be really important. Yeah, it's definitely one of the sort of like hallmarks of like badly produced audio when you have these sort of like little pops at the beginning or end of audio files. So it's just something to look for. You probably also want to notice that in the representation of this audio file, if I could maybe have a little even more real estate here on my track. Excusez-moi. So, okay. So, yeah. So you might notice that here, the sort of keyframe adjustment thing, while for video, that translates to opacity. For audio, that's going to translate directly to volume. And so you might notice that right now, it has a left and a right channel. So let me go, I think the bullfrog will be a much clearer example of this. Zoom out on the timeline so I don't get lost here. So I'm going to move the playhead over here. And let's say for now, since I want to kind of test this bullfrog thing, I'm going to go ahead and mute this track. So definitely you can hit this little M button, and that will mute the track. And so now, yeah. Okay, so that's great. We have the ocean sounds muted. And let me adjust this volume level and sort of show you how that works. And let's take it back down. So in sort of the same way that we were kind of bringing videos up and down, you can do that with soundtracks. And it's a really great way to kind of integrate your soundtracks. I think especially with sound, more so than with video, having sound that, like, for example, if we started playing here at like full volume, hang on. I mean, it sounds really like, right? So having those kind of ramps up and down and in and out is really important to kind of like make the sound seem like it is a coherent whole, probably more so than video. So yeah, other sort of things that you can do with sound, you can also make sound, you can use sound effects. So I think to show you the sound effects and how they work, I'm going to probably head back to the sort of root folder of my project because I think my scatting sound was right here. So I'm going to play this for you at normal volume just so you have kind of a baseline. I'm going to play it on this muted track. It's just like Photoshop, you know, when you make a layer invisible. Okay, so then if I want to apply some effects to this, first of all, because this is from the file sharing site, I'm going to just check it out and see what the beginning and the end look like. And this looks like a pretty decent beginning, like it doesn't have like any kind of real thing going on there. And then, let's see, I'm just going to check the other end really quickly. It looks beautiful. So I'm going to zoom out a tiny bit. And if you go over to the effects panel, the same one that we used for video, and you go to audio effects, you will find, shockingly, audio effects. So some of these are like really super fun, and some of them are really utilitarian. So this sounds pretty clean, meaning it doesn't have a lot of static or weird stuff. But if you did want to remove the static, probably using this denoise filter is your best choice. I'm going to show you a filter that we can use on this that will actually like be apparent, because if we used a noise reduction filter on this, it's so clean we wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So let's go to special. And I'm just going to look through these and see what looks interesting. The pitch shifter is kind of probably the most fun audio sort of effect. So let's do that. So you drag the effect onto the clip on the timeline. And then you'll get this, you know, in your effects controls panel, you'll be able to see the thing, the effect, and you could potentially go to custom setup. Over here on custom setup, they have a ton of presets, and so Angry Gerbil is totally excellent. In fact, let's start with Angry Gerbil. And so now. My personal favorite of this group is the Dark Lord. And sometimes if it doesn't sound quite right, you can just play with these sliders. So yeah, you basically, the point is you can get really profound shifts. Just like with visual stuff, you can get really profound, oh, I lost my, hang on just a second. Oh, there we are. You can get really profound shifts by using these effects. And one of the things you can do also is if you decide you don't want to use an effect anymore, just like with video effects, you can right-click it and clear it. So the other thing that you might want to consider doing is trying, especially if you have a stereo track, you can try the panner. And it doesn't pan like in real time, but well, hang on, forgot to fly out that window. So yeah, obviously you have to kind of look at the whole effect. So over here, this should shift it to the left channel. Can you all hear it out of the right? Okay. So the reason for that is because we had these keyframes. So I'm actually going to just get rid of these. That was from my previous clicking. So let's do that one more time. So, yeah. So in order to really like take advantage of panning, you have to use keyframes, and those keyframes work in like exactly the same way as that I probably didn't demonstrate all that well on Monday. So, I mean, if we want to really sort of do this and kind of follow through, we can create those keyframes. So let me go ahead and do that. So basically, at this point, it's in the median, the middle, and I'm sort of like somewhere near the beginning of the track. So that would be a good place to create a keyframe, and my keyframe adjustment is going to go all the way over to the side. And then I'm going to drag this to another part of the clip and add another keyframe, and then I'm going to drag it all the way back. And you can see here on this graph, it's starting, you know, and then it's going to the other direction, which is what we want. So let's just try that, play it. Yeah, so panning's not something that you have to do by any, that's a little bit advanced, but it's definitely something that can be like, it can take your project from like, yeah, that's neat, to like, whoa. Yeah. No, it's always there. Yeah, that's a great question. Volume and panning are sort of always in this menu. Just like with video, you have like position and some other parameters that are just always there. Yep. So I don't want to spend like, I mean, I think I've sort of given you like the 25-cent tour of audio in Premiere, and I think this kind of definitely sort of, you know, covers what you would need to know for, you know, completing the project and just thinking about audio in maybe a little bit of a deeper way. I want to talk to you also about exporting, and that's definitely a thing. So before I export, I'm going to go ahead and render render the whole thing. So I'm going to render in to out. This is going to take a minute because, as you can see, I've sort of procrastinated and I have multiple unrendered areas. So this is, yeah, definitely one of the reasons why, you know, it's good to usually do it as you go. Dun, dun, dun. If you're interested, while this is rendering, so I actually do a good bit of audio production in my own work, and if you're interested in doing audio production, I heard there's a class in the dance department that is teaching Ableton Live, which is a really like professional grade sort of audio production software. I actually tend to use a software called Adobe Audition, and so that is something that comes with your Creative Suite bundle. And if you're interested in really like going a little bit further with audio production, that's what I would recommend. That's what I do all my work in. I'd love to spend more money on other software, sarcasm, but I just use Audition because we get it for, you know, it comes for free with all the other stuff. And it does a pretty decent job. So now this is ready to go. So, definitely, it's a good idea to kind of watch the entire project and just make sure that all of your effects are working and that everything's, you know, looking the way it should. Because I have definitely exported many a project where I accidentally moved something around and I didn't see it, and then I look at my final video, maybe a little too late, and it's, you know, it's wrong. So it's not what I wanted to do. So yeah, I would definitely encourage you to watch your project at this stage. And then you can click the export button here, and that'll open up the sort of export panel. What it'll do is it'll create a file name that is based on your sequence. So whatever your sequence name is, that's what your default file name is going to be. Now, most people don't put that much thought into their sequence name because usually your sequence name is just whatever was the first video that you dragged onto the timeline. So I would take this opportunity to name your file something that makes sense to you and that you will be able to find later. Okay? So I'm going to call it something like My Stupid Project 2. And then the second thing that I want to make sure that you do is, I don't know why Adobe does this, but Adobe saves your file in this almost like triple nested folder inside your Documents folder by default. And honestly, does anyone use their Documents folder? Yeah, it's ridiculous. I do use my Documents folder maybe once in a while, but it's not very useful. So definitely what you want to do is just navigate. Usually I just stick it in my project folder. So navigate to that project folder. And this is where you probably want to save your video so you can find it. Don't pay too much attention right now to the file format because that may change depending on other settings that we make. So there are a couple of important things to check here to sort of maximize your chance of success. So under format, the format that I recommend is H.264, okay? That is full stop, the recommended format. Mostly that is the recommended format for video sharing sites like YouTube and Vimeo. So if you're thinking about becoming a YouTube star, this is the format you want to use. Now, there are other formats in this list that would be okay. So if you don't have H.264, my second choice would probably be Apple ProRes. That's going to make kind of a large file, but that will be pretty good. I'll tell you what, if you can't find H.264 on your list of codecs, that's what these are called, email me and let me know. And maybe show me the list that you have, because I have noticed that some students that have Adobe don't have this list. So if that happens to you, I think it's unlikely, but if it does happen to you, send me an email. So, okay, so then there's all of these tabs for different stuff that you can do, and some of them we need to address, and some of them we don't. So definitely under video, basically whether you need to address them or not, first of all, I would look at this part of the window down here. So it looks like, because pretty much this is already correct, so we don't have to mess with anything in here. And the reason that it's already correct is because we've set up our sequence settings correctly, and because we chose the H.264 codec. So that sets some of those options. Now, here we're looking for, okay, H.264, we got that. 1920 by 1080, that's very important. That's full HD. That's what the project requires. And then the other sort of setting that matters is this 30 frames per second. And in general, if you set up your sequence settings correctly, you shouldn't have to worry about all this stuff. I'm just kind of telling you this is your place where you do your final checks, and so that nothing goes really wrong. And then here, these audio settings are fine. It's 48 kilohertz, that's 48,000 hertz, and it's in stereo. So that's kind of all we have to care about. So there are two paths you can go by here. There is the export, which is what we're going to do because I think our project is definitely not more than 2 minutes long, and it's HD video, so it's not 4K or 8K or some really cumbersome resolution. So exporting should be fine. It should probably, in Meg's predictable world, this should only take 2 minutes max to export. Now, if you're working on a really big video or some video that's really long and maybe also is HD, you could totally try this Send to Media Coder option. I use the media encoder when I'm exporting my own videos if it's a large project, because what's going to happen, I'm going to start exporting my project, class is going to end, I'm going to have to unplug my laptop, put it away, stick it in my backpack, go back to my office, And then when I open it back up, it may or may not resume its export. So the Adobe Media Encoder is specifically designed for larger files that require longer render times. And it allows you to actually hit a pause button and then shut down or restart your laptop and then start the process again. And so it's pretty powerful if you're doing like professional grade media recording or stuff like that. But for us, because we have kind of a smallish project, I think export will be great. One thing that you probably want to do here, it does not hurt to move the playhead and make sure that your entire video is within the boundaries of what's being exported, right? So if you move these, that is going to zoom your timeline. And you do have the option of potentially adding markers to only export like a portion of your video. For most people, that's not going to apply. That's not necessary. But it is a good idea to just look at the ends of your video and make sure that you don't have like 5 minutes of silence in the beginning. Or sometimes I get student videos turned in that have like 20 minutes of silence at the end. And then a student might ask me like, Meg, why is my project so gigantic? I'll be like, oh, it's because you have like 20 minutes of silence at the end of your video. And even though that's compressible, it still takes up a lot of space. So yeah, just make sure that like everything looks as it should. And then we're going to hit export. Do, do, do. So as I predicted, less than 2 minutes. And let me see. I'm just going to open up this project file so we can see it when it comes in. Yeah, it's going to take a little second. If you haven't seen this already, I put up like a little bonus video. It's a video that I recorded a little while ago about headphones and why you would want certain headphones for audio production. So yeah, if you have a chance, check it out. And I'm definitely, because sort of like working with people that use professional audio tools, like I love having studio headphones because you just hear so much more. And definitely even working through computer speakers can be really challenging. So if you're interested in this type of work or this type of production and you're looking for something to buy, buying yourself a pair of studio headphones would probably be like my #1 pick. Because you don't have to spend a lot of money to get a good pair. So, are y'all looking forward to spring break? Yeah, any special plans? Well, I hope we're not shoveling snow. That's all I can say. It's a lot. So we're not done. I'm going to go ahead and just show you how to upload this video to YouTube and just kind of going through the process of that. So I can watch this little status bar so I can be at the ready. All right, I think we're good. So before I upload the project to YouTube or Canvas or whatever, I'm going to do one thing, one really important thing. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to watch it because video encoding is something that can go off the rails. And so we don't have to watch the whole thing right now. But I would seriously recommend watching it before you upload it because sometimes Premiere is not perfect. And I have seen, like little encoding errors or sometimes you might just see like a pink rectangle, kind of moving across or stuff like that. So definitely I would, at the very least, if you're pressed for time, I would scrub through it and make sure that everything is there. which it looks like it is. So that's good. So when you go to YouTube, you're asked to register for an account, obviously. And you should be able to go to the part that says well, let me go ahead and go to my general YouTube page and just show you where it is. So if you haven't used YouTube for video hosting, if you go over to where your profile photo is, there's a thing that says like your channel. And that's basically what we're looking for. So I mostly use this for class, but basically what you're going to do is click Manage Videos. And then from there, create, upload video, find your file. There it is. And YouTube is better than other streaming services about letting you set up everything before you and it actually is uploading it right now as we're setting the settings. So it's a little more streamlined as far as this part goes. So obviously you can fill out, title, description, all that stuff. Your thumbnail, it doesn't get generated until after you upload it, so you'll have to wait at least a half hour to be able to set your thumbnail. And I would just go to the next page here. So you can definitely, I usually just skip this. And then for checks, YouTube will do those checks automatically. What is it checking for? Copyrighted material, of course. So even like videos from this class sometimes have gotten flagged by YouTube. So I don't have any super great advice for that. I would just, maybe consider that when you're using copyrighted material. Or maybe use a hosting service that isn't so aggressive about checking for it. So I'm going to skip that. And here, probably if you don't want to show this to all of your friends in the entire world, I would opt for the unlisted option. So that's where you can send us a link and we can look at your project, but it's not going to be sort of like available for search or available for anybody who's using YouTube to look at your stuff. For this class, I make all the videos public because I want everybody to be able to see them, right? And then, of course, if you want to sort of save it as a draft or allow people to approve users, you can go for the private option. I think the unlisted option, unless it contains really spicy content, I would use the unlisted option because I don't think people are just entering random YouTube links in the hopes that they can see a 107 project. I just don't see that happening. But also the password process can be a little cumbersome. So, but it's totally up to you. We're happy to work with whatever privacy setting you choose. If you do choose a password, just make sure you put it in the comments when you turn it in on Canvas. Okay, and so then you go ahead and you publish. That's it. You are so done. And pretty much all you have to do at this point is get the link. So you can do that even if it's not done uploading. You just go up here to Options and then Get Shareable Link. That's it. That's how to make a YouTube video. All right. So, hey, if I don't see you, which I'm pretty sure I won't, have a fantastic spring break. Oh my gosh. It'll be great. Yeah. Yeah, do it. I'll see you all on the other side.